morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and in love. Good morning, sun. Good morning, sun. Good morning, life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and in love.
And good morning. Let me just check here. Make sure you can hear me okay. So today is a little bit of a different topic that I wanted to talk about. It is not Business Central related, so no Business Central logo, and I made the font red. So it is the fall conference season is coming up, and I don't know why conferences tend to be in the fall, but at least in the conferences I attend, they tend to bunch up around the fall and they end up presenting at several conferences in the second half of the year. And this year, although it has been strange, is no different. So part of that has been working with content committees and conferences to try and get speakers, and that can be a challenging process. So we're always looking for new presenters and speakers at conferences. So I thought I would share what that is like, what it's like to submit a session, try to be a presenter, what it's like from the other side to be on the conference content committee, and just give you some insight in that process so that if you are at all interested or even curious about presenting at a conference, let's talk about that. And I'm happy to help people participate in that process and get involved in conferences. So with that, let's get started. So housekeeping note, videos are live stream on Periscope, YouTube, and Twitch. And I do see the chat, so if you want to send in a question or a comment or feedback, you can live chat from any of those three platforms. And I should see it in my little console here, and I'll try to figure out how to reply. But live chat is available when the live stream is going on, of course. And if you're watching the recorded version, you can watch on Periscope, which shows up in the Twitter feed. That's very convenient, or through the Periscope mobile app, but that is very mobile oriented. So if you want a higher quality version, YouTube or Twitch are the best places for that. So why do I present? Like, why would someone want to do this? Like, are these people crazy? Why would they want to get up in front of a crowd of people and do public speaking? Isn't that scary and bad? Well, one of the number one reasons I found why it's good for me to present is learning. Very often I will need to choose a topic, or I will just be given a topic to speak about unsolicited, and I need to figure out how to present that. And at first I think, oh gosh, it's not a good topic. I don't know that well, blah, blah, blah. But then by the time I get done presenting it, so I research it, I prepare a presentation, I develop some thoughts on the topic, and then I present it, it's like, wow, that was pretty valuable. And I always end up learning something. Even if it's a topic I think I understand fairly well, I usually learn something in the process of preparing the presentation, giving the presentation, or getting feedback from the audience. So almost always learn something no matter what I'm doing with any given presentation. So that is one great reason. You're always learning. And when you study a topic for I implemented a new feature, and it's automatically switching my screen depending on what I say. So I have to be careful what I say now until I go and disable that. That's hilarious. So it's voice activated audio production. Anyway, so after I give the presentation at the conference, I often get feedback from users, and I learn a lot in the process. So it's a great way to learn, and you effectively become an expert on that topic if you study it deeply. So it's a really interesting experience. And then also a great thing about conferences is to connect with the users, or the group or the user group or community that you're presenting to. And being able to meet those people, speak with them, hear the feedback, from them and you see them nod their head because they understand what you just went through or they understand the issue you're talking about, I think that's a great experience. It's always great to have that interaction and connect with the people who are attending sessions. And when you connect with those people, many times they'll provide you with feedback and they'll say, well, I had a similar situation, but here's what I encountered, or I want to use this software feature in this particular way, or how would I go about dealing with this business problem or these requirements? And you get to talk about those situations that you may not ever be exposed to normally. So it's a great way to just expand the conversations you have to understand what end users or users' concerns are. So I think that's really valuable. And presenting helps me improve my speaking and communication skills. When I first started presenting, I was nervous and and my hands were a little shaking and, you're stressed, you feel the adrenaline, and it is a learned skill. It's not something most people can just naturally walk up there. You may have seen sales presentations where the person is delivering that very smoothly and able to speak eloquently. Well, I'm sure they've done it 1,000 times and been doing those presentations for years. It's not something where you just walk on stage and you can do it. So it's something that you practice, and by submitting the presentation sessions and learning, you develop that skill. It's just like anything else. You have to give it a try, you need to practice it, and you learn it. And then it's fun. I enjoy it. And I think many other people who regularly present at conferences and do speaking or webinars or videos like this, they enjoy it. So I happen to like it. Okay. So let me make sure I didn't miss anything. So how do you become a speaker? So if you've never presented at a conference before or never done a webinar or a user group meeting or anything like that, how do you go about doing that? And this is why I created this session or thought of this session, is just to share this with people who may have never done a conference presentation before. If you haven't, and if you have any ideas for a session, definitely go for it. Submit something. We're desperate for content many times. So find some conferences for your area of focus. If you're in the Microsoft world and you work with Business Central, which is obviously what I talk a lot about, then hey, find some topic about Business Central that you think is interesting or that you like or you think you had some issue with, but you solved it. Think about what that could be. If you're working with Power Platform, and even if you're just learning it, it's like, hey, here's some topics that I think are interesting relative to the tool or process or business problem or requirement that I'm trying to address. If you've gone through it, I can pretty much guarantee someone else has gone through it, is going through it, is about to go through it, or is interested in understanding how you solve that problem. You do not have completely unique problems or completely unique learning. I've learned that over the years. Wow, I just discovered X, Y, and Z, and I'll post a blog post or a video. Yeah, we've been doing that for 10 years. It's like, oh, well, that's good because that tells me that other people have this same concern. And even though I just think I discovered it for the first time or I just solved the problem myself the first time, other people have dealt with it in the past, and I guarantee other people will deal with it in the future. So even if you don't think you're an expert in Business Central or Power Platform or SQL Server or whatever your topic is, bank reconciliation, fixed assets, automating processes in your ERP system, whatever you do and whatever you find interesting, find something that you like. If it's interesting to you, I can pretty much guarantee there are at least a few other people that find it interesting or want to hear more about it. And once you find those conferences that are in your area of focus, try to find the organizers of that conference or get in touch with them to understand what their process is for their requests for proposals and the dates and process for that. There are some conferences that only have paid speakers, and there's apparently this professional speaking circuit where these people go and present and they get paid. I've never experienced that, but I've kind of heard about it. The conferences that I usually work with are more user group and end user and community type sessions, like the Microsoft product user groups or the user group summit or the Directions NA, things like that, and the new Dynamics Con virtual conference that's coming up. So I typically participate in those, and those usually I'll contact the organizer or I'll look for their announcement about requests for proposals, understand what the deadline is, and try to figure out what type of content they're looking for. And if I have some ideas, I'll think about, okay, what can I present? So I've been focusing on Business Central lately. So I've been thinking about what are some session ideas that I could present. And I'm new to Business Central. I'm not an expert, so I can't present on some advanced topic of like how to implement AL interfaces. Well, I don't know AL well enough. I've never used interfaces, and there are 10 other people who can present that topic better than I. So I'm a beginner. I have beginner concerns. I'm learning from the beginning. So that's what I'm going to present about, how to start from scratch. So I'll show you an example of a session that I created as a complete beginner. And it's kind of weird to say, I'm an expert at being a beginner. I'm an expert at not knowing what I'm doing and starting from scratch. And people are like, well, I'm starting from scratch. I want to hear what this guy went through. I'm happy to share that experience. So that's what I'm starting out with, some simple topics. And if you're intimidated by this process, try to find a co-presenter. Find a friend, a colleague, someone else you might know in the community who might know more about this topic or this subject or this product that you'd like to learn about. That's what I did. So I reached out to a few friends and said, hey, would you be interested in co-presenting on some Business Central topic? They said, sure, we'd love to. Now, I had to come up with the topic, but I thought, it's like, well, I know what that person does. I know what that person does. So let me try to see if I can come up with a topic where it's in their area of expertise, but I can kind of learn in the process. So I said, okay, how about this topic and this topic? And they both thought it was a great idea. So a co-presenter is a great way to start. That's how I started. A friend invited me. She said, hey, Steve, do you want to co-present with me at this conference? And we can talk about this topic. I was like, great. I know about that topic. That's perfect. And it was a 101 beginner presentation. So it wasn't too stressful. We put together the presentation. We knew each other well. And so we were able to communicate and banter and have a good time. It was a great session. So even though I was stressed and nervous, it went well. And it's like, wow, that wasn't so bad. So a great way to start is a co-presenter. Then when you're ready, you have your ideas, submit your sessions. And I'll show you what that looks like. But make sure to submit them well before the deadline as soon as you can so that they get into the queue. And I'll explain why. The people organizing the conference have a lot of work to do. So a late submission to their process doesn't help your chances. And then after you've submitted or before or while you're waiting, as soon as possible, if you think of an idea, come up with an outline. Just open PowerPoint, put some slide headers, do just a rough outline of bullet points, just to get some thoughts down. And as you think of new ideas, just put those down just in a rough outline. Doesn't have to be prepared, polished, finished. These are just your notes to give you ideas for what your session content could be. So once you've submitted, or once you're getting ready to submit your session proposal, what do you submit? And this varies a little bit by conference. They may have guidelines as to what they want. They may have recommendations, but here's an example of a kind of a typical session proposal that I would submit. And I clearly state who is presenting. Sometimes they say you can submit a session proposal even though you won't be the presenter. So maybe I want someone to present about Business Central cash flow management, but I'm not the person to do that. I'm just saying, hey, it would be great if you could have that topic. So you want to be clear whether you're going to present it or whether it's just a proposal. And if you have co-presenters, then list that as well. Say my name and your co-presenter name and just make it clear this is a co-presentation. And if the conference allows co-presentations, then that'll work out. And then the type. Let the conference organizers know what this is about, because often the people organizing the conference, they're not experts in this particular domain. They're familiar with the product or the topic, but they may not know this programming feature or that language or that technical detail or this feature, specific feature. So you need to let them know. So in this case, I list the type as this is Business Central. That's the topic. So in the case of, say, DynamicsCon conference, there's Business Central, there's F&O, there's CRM, there's Power Platform. So they need to know, how do they organize this? Which track does it belong to? So in this case, the track is Business Central. And is this a technical session? Is it a functional session? Usually you'll know the tracks for a given conference, or look at the prior agendas if this conference has been held in the past. See if they have different tracks. Maybe it's a sales track, a marketing track, an implementation track. Maybe it's a support session, whatever. Let them know what the nature of this session is. In this case, this would be considered, I think, a technical session because it's oriented towards developers. And then let them know what level this is. Is this beginner, intermediate, or advanced? And use your best judgment. Obviously, those are kind of vague categories or labels, but who do you think would show up to this session? A complete novice who knows nothing about the topic, someone who has some experience, or is this an advanced session for an expert level audience? And those are usually less common, but they do exist. So advanced AL interfaces, that would be, I would consider a more advanced technical topic. Whereas this, although it's technical, I think this is a beginner technical session. So if you are a programmer coming from another platform, another language, and you want to learn BCAL development, if you know nothing, this is the place for you to go. So then I have a title, and you want to try to come up with something interesting, catchy, descriptive. So this isn't BC development, period. If you can be descriptive in your title, that really helps. It really helps the conference organizer just to, at a glance, know what you're doing, what you're proposing. And it helps the session attendees. If it's just AL development or BC development, that could mean any number of things. That could be a dozen different potential topics from beginner to advanced. You don't know. So be descriptive. Learning Business Central development from scratch. How do I get started? So add some type of idiom or some witty phrase and make it kind of interesting. Now, I've seen some titles that are so witty and clever that I don't know what they're talking about. So make the most of your ABC when let's shoot to the moon. What does that mean? So they went a little too far in my opinion, because I don't know what they're talking about. It may be a great presentation. It's a witty title, but the title alone didn't convey the topic to me. So I hope this presentation says, learning from scratch. Okay, that's me. I can relate. How do I get started? This isn't a deep dive into Docker configuration. This is, how do I start the process of learning Business Central development if I know nothing? Perfect. That's the session for me. Or, nope, I understand how to do that. That is not the session for me. That's just as good. I don't want people attending the session if they think they're getting something else out of it. If this is the wrong session for them, I want to try to communicate that. Then you'll want to write a description, a brief description, and this length varies by conference, but I try to write at least a few sentences. Are you interested in developing Business Central customizations? Are you new to Business Central and starting from scratch when it comes to AL development? So I'm asking questions to allow the audience member or the conference participant to self-qualify. Is this conference session for you? In this session, you'll learn how to get started with BC development from scratch, including, so I'm saying explicitly, here's what I'm going to do, and then I list bullet points. And I find that these are sometimes called learning objectives. So some conferences will ask you specifically, please provide 3 learning objectives that a attendee should achieve after attending your presentation. So I will explain how to set up a Business Central Docker container, how to set up a development environment, how to use Visual Studio Code to create a Business Central extension, and I will provide learning and training resources. Those are my learning objectives for my session. And I structure this because some conferences specifically ask for it, and it also helps me come up with my initial bullet points for an outline. What am I going to include in this session? Now, when I'm doing this, in the back of my mind is, how am I going to cover all of this in less than an hour? So that is a concern, especially in this new virtual conference environments with shorter sessions. So my only concern with this description, looking back at it, is I may have oversold how much content I can deliver in an hour. So someone may come to this thinking, well, you didn't tell me exactly how to set up a Business Central Docker container. What commands do I use? And that could be a 4-hour, 8-hour session if you really want to get in the nitty-gritty. How to set up a development environment. Well, he didn't click through every screen, so I don't know all of my configuration options. So that is one concern about how you present this and making sure you can meet those learning objectives. I have my interpretation of these learning objectives. The reader or the conference attendee may have their interpretation, so be aware of that. And then I note programming background is recommended. So when I do a technical session, I try to offer some caveat to let the people know this is for non-developers, or some experience with web services is recommended. You can sit in on the session and maybe learn something, but you may not understand everything I'm talking about. So that's something to keep in mind, is let the conference attendee know, like, what do you expect, or what is the typical profile of someone who might be attending this session. Okay, so now that you've created your session proposal and you have submitted it, what happens next? Well, in my experience, it usually goes to a planning committee. This may be called, my voice activation. Okay, I think it's key to presentation. So I'll be careful again. So once you submit your session, it goes to a planning committee. And that's often someone in the conference organization or the company that's running the conference. Someone receives that, and they usually put it into a spreadsheet. And that list of presentation submissions gets reviewed by a content committee. So let's say a conference has multiple products or multiple tracks. Maybe there's a sales track, a marketing track, a technical track. So there will usually be sometimes there will be different committees for each of those tracks. So the small group of organizers and often volunteers will be participating. They'll review that. They'll receive the submissions by track and review and organize the submissions by track, type, and level. So is this a Business Central? Is this Power Platform? Is this technical? Is it functional? And is it beginner, intermediate, or advanced? They'll put that in a simple Excel spreadsheet usually. Then they have to decide or choose which sessions get selected. And that's often pretty difficult. So the content committee or the organizers, they have to look at those titles and those descriptions you provided and think, well, what would our audience want to see? They're not, clairvoyant, and they're not, saying, well, I want to choose this speaker over this speaker. It's really just trying to figure out, okay, how do we select these? And often you'll vote, or you'll add points like 1, 2, or 3 to try to rank order them, because out of, say, 20 submissions, you may only get to select 6. So you need to figure out, how do you whittle down that list of 20 down to 6 to make the cut for the conference? So it's a challenging process. So try to help those organizers and the content committees choose. And if your session is extra interesting, hopefully it can be chosen based on your title and description. One of the challenges for these content organizers and committees is they don't know what their attendees, the conference attendees, they don't know who that will be. They don't know the roles or the mix of people. Will they be executives? Will they be end users? Will they be salespeople? Will they be C-class executives looking to determine more of a strategic vision for the company, and they want high-level concerns? They don't want feature by feature analysis or configuration walkthroughs. So depending on who the attendees are, it's really hard to guess which session will be popular among those attendees. If that conference has been organized in the past, they may have the attendee list and titles and be able to determine what the mix was of their attendees. Oftentimes, if it's a new conference, they just don't know, and they're having to craft the content based on what they think they want to offer to their attendees. So it is challenging. But regardless of how they review the sessions and who their attendees are, almost always the conference organizers are looking for more session variety, more variety of topics. So even if you think your idea, you may not be an expert, but go ahead and submit it. Give them that option so that they can see that as an alternative topic or as a new twist on the topic. And so go ahead and submit. Help out those session organizers. And conference organizers are often looking for a more diverse speaker pool. So a lot of times you have these people who present a lot. And I guess I'm one of those people. I've presented at several conferences. And the conference organizer's like, that's great. Yep, Steve, we'd love to have him for a session, but we don't want Steve for 6 sessions. No offense to Steve. We need more people. We need different voices. We need different viewpoints. And I don't want to be there for 6 sessions either. So if you can submit a session with a different topic or you have a different viewpoint, submit it. And oftentimes, I think it's very common in technical conferences. For some reason, it's mostly men. So they need a mix. They want to hear women presenters, or if it's in North America, that's often Caucasian males. And so they're interested in hearing from minorities and females. So definitely any way that we can involve more minority speakers, more female speakers in order to provide some balance so that it's not just the same speakers and it's not the same guys and it's a different set of thoughts and interpretations and experiences. Definitely, if you can contribute in that way to add diversity to the speaker pool, please submit sessions. Conference organizers are really looking for increased diversity. So wait for the news. Oftentimes it can be a multi-month wait. So maybe you need to submit by May 30th, but you won't get the announcement about the selections until July. So just this week I got the notification that a few of my sessions were submitted, and it was multiple conferences notifying me at once. So I kind of freaked out. Wait, I have to prepare 6 sessions for 3 different conferences. Yikes. So if your session isn't selected, do not feel bad. I just explained what the process was. Maybe they had 50 sessions and they can only select 6. Maybe they know that their audience mix is executive level and your presentation was end user focused. So maybe you didn't realize what their mix is and they didn't really disclose that. So maybe they only had like upcoming Dynamics Con. It's only so many days. You can only have so many presentations in a virtual conference. So it's a total of 12, and I think it's 6 technical, 6 functional. If there are 20 functional submissions and yours didn't get selected, it's because there were only 6 that could be selected. So don't feel bad. Ask about future opportunities. And create your session anyway. Even if yours did not get selected, go ahead and create it so that if you want to resubmit that in the future or to a different conference or next year, you'll have it ready. You'll have it fleshed out or ready to go. Go ahead and work on it anyway. It'll be great practice. If your session is selected, you'll get the email and you'll, at least I do, instantly stress out. Oh my gosh, now I have this additional work to do. Don't worry, there's a process. So, if your session is selected, calm down, work on the session outline. Start with an outline. At least that's what I do. Pull up PowerPoint, write some bullet points out, say, okay, this is the general flow that I want to have. These are the topics I want to cover. And then you can flesh that out. Think about what demos, if it's, say, software or some process, do you want to demonstrate that or show an example? If so, put some notes about what demo you will want. And I recommend doing that because I will often submit a session And if I don't write down what I'm thinking, I will think 3 months later, wow, what did I have in mind when I wrote that? I can't remember. And it's like, oops. So I either need to adjust the presentation content, change the description, or come up with a different demo because I forgot what I was thinking at the time. So try to write it down as early as possible, any ideas or thoughts. So if you do get accepted, you'll often need to reply or confirm or go to some website to log in to formally confirm and accept that your sessions for the conference. And oftentimes the conference will ask you to submit a short biography or description about you, your name, title, company you work for, and a quick bio. And oftentimes they'll ask for a headshot. So have a headshot photo of some kind prepared. And it doesn't have to be a professional headshot like this. You can take your own snapshot, especially in these days, people understand. Even, a cell phone photo is fine, but try to have a nice, clean, blank wall. I wouldn't recommend grabbing that photo of your family at the beach or from the camping trip where you're wearing flannels and have messed up hair because you just got out of a tent and then cropping down to your head. It looks kind of strange. Try to just at least have a standing pose photo with a blank wall behind you. Just nothing special, just a simple photo that you're not having to crop out friends or family members. Then sometimes they'll ask for any social media links that you want to share. And personally, I only share professional social media links. I don't share any social things. So if you're on Facebook with friends and family, I wouldn't submit that personally. I would keep it professional for these types of conferences that I'm thinking of. Then for your bio, have a short bio. It doesn't have to be elaborate. If you're just working as the accounting manager at this company, that's great. You don't have to have, accolades and degrees listed behind your name. I happen to be a Microsoft MVP, so I usually mention that to give the audience context as to who I am as a speaker. So Steve is a Microsoft MVP specializing in business applications. That's kind of my professional identity. So I work with Business Central, Power Apps, and these other products. So that gives the attendee some context as to who I am, what my experience is, what type of things I work with. And I usually have a shorter bio and then a slightly longer bio. Because sometimes there's space limitations in the conference platform or the speaker bio. So you want to have something kind of short. And sometimes they'll tell you, 500 characters or less or whatever the limitation is. But sometimes they'll want a longer bio and you can provide both and let them choose. So I would have both of those queued up. And then you'll prepare for your session. Attend the speaker calls, look out for those emails, make sure to get them on your calendar. Sometimes you have to register, sometimes it'll be a meeting invite. And even if you've presented several times in the past, I'd still recommend attending the speaker calls. These days, I'd strongly recommend attending because every conference is going to have a different way of handling their virtual conference scenario. Some just do recordings, some do a platform, some you need to prepare in advance, do lighting and audio video, attend and figure out what is their process. A physical conference is usually a little bit easier. Show up, plug in your laptop, present in front of a projector. Nowadays, you really need to know how is this virtual conference handling AV, video, audio, do they have a team? Are you on your own? Is it GoToWebinar? How is this going to work? Then usually the thing I'm waiting on as a speaker is the conference presentation template. All the conferences I've attended and spoken at, they want their own template, which is fine. It makes it look consistent and makes it look nice across speakers. And so they will usually provide that or provide you with a link to download. And unfortunately, this often comes later. So they're scrambling to get everything put together. So you may have to wait several weeks to get that presentation template. In the meantime, you can still work on your outline and your slides, but be aware you're going to have to transfer that over to their template. And I have yet to have a process where I could copy and paste the text paste, but the layout is a mess. So I usually have to redo everything in their template. But you can still work on the presentation outline. You can fill in bullet points in the slides. You can grab some images or graphics, prepare those, and you can start working on your demos. And then you're going to have to work on that well before the deadline, and just make sure to submit your presentation and any of your supplemental materials prior to the submission deadline. And that helps the conference organizers get those materials published or set up in the library or archive where users can download or view them in advance. So it's really helpful for them. And if you're late, it usually takes them extra time after the conference. So if you're late, your presentation often won't be available to attendees. So it's a entirely new world in terms of conferences. The physical conference process we kind of knew well. This new virtual conference, everyone's trying to figure out how to do it, and everyone is doing it differently, and the process is different for everyone. But what is kind of common, it's very similar to a webinar or some type of other online presentation, and most of us are familiar with screen sharing and things like that. But it requires entirely different tools and skills than a typical in-person conference presentation. So me doing this and me doing a video presentation is a very different experience, even for me, than an in-person conference presentation. So it takes practice. Talking to a webcam is very different than working in front of a projector screen in front of an audience. There's no feedback. I can't look at the audience. I'm looking at a chat app window, checking to see, okay, are people watching? Are comments coming in? I'm trying to monitor several things. It is very distracting. So it's a very different skill set. So just because I've done many presentations at conferences before does not mean that I'll be good at presenting in front of a camera with a webcam. And if you've seen any virtual conferences over the last few months, it's kind of painful sometimes because you'll see someone with a laptop with their poor quality laptop webcam pointing at the ceiling, and they're in their basement. And so it'll go from this slick produced video by the conference organizers to Sam in his basement. You see the bare rafters and 2x4s in the background and the bicycles and the boxes of junk. Not a good look. So that person, Sam, may have been the greatest presenter on stage, but his online virtual presentation, it could use some improvement. So think about your audience. So the webcam requires practice. I'm having to consciously look at this camera and stare at it. It's really weird. I'm having to glance up at my presentation in this monitor over here. I'm having to monitor the recording over here, monitor chat, and then look at YouTube and make sure the live stream is working. It's a juggling act. And you as a presenter, you may have the conference platform on screen here, and is it still recording? Did I get a comment? Did the organizer or the moderator send me a note? Is my audio not working? You're juggling that. It's a completely different experience. So I have a camera, and you may have a webcam. You may have just your laptop webcam. Given the craziness, you may not have been able to buy a webcam. So I've invested in a camera. It's a dedicated, physical camera. It's not a webcam with an HDMI port. I invested in lighting, so that's why this looks the way it does. If I turn these lights off, it looks different. If I turn these background lights off, my green screen doesn't work as well. So, I've invested in this setup to try to make this look presentable. I'm using a microphone. So this is not a headset. This is not my iPhone earbuds. So I've invested in microphone, an expensive microphone to make myself sound reasonable, to capture my voice without hearing my kids yelling in the background, because that's the new reality, right? And your home office may not be the ideal presentation. I've seen people in their dining rooms. I've seen people in their basement, like I mentioned. We're all having to find space. So I have a green screen behind me. So I have my office doors behind me. That's the best I can do in my case. So it's office doors, a gray hanging background, or a green screen. Those are my options that I've come up with. I've cleaned it up to make it presentable, but think of these things prior to the conference so you can try to be presentable in a quiet room with a decent background and reasonable lighting. And although we're at home, although things are a little, we dropped the pretense, right? The dog will be barking in the background. Try to offer a professional presentation. Just as you don't want to present in a t-shirt and torn jeans at a physical conference for accountants, I don't recommend that. You will, wear a decent shirt. If someone can see that you're standing, wear pants. Don't wear shorts and flip-flops, Pretend that the camera might capture you, as you walk away without you knowing it. Be presentable. I don't think you need to wear a suit necessarily, but something for a guy, a polo or a dress shirt, make yourself presentable. And then what's kind of nice about this new world is you can practice. You can record your session. You can have all the tools set up. You can see how it looks. You can live stream to YouTube, and I think you can make that non-public or private. And so you can practice that process. You can test your recording setup. So you can practice. And I just attended a speaker prep call where they're letting us use the full virtual conference platform, the speaker portal, to do a 100% practice session. So we have full access to it in advance. We can log in, test our audio, test our video, test our slides, practice our entire session from A to B, and we can record it, we can re-record, we can delete, resave, and we can even record a full copy of our presentation in case we have technical issues. So we can have that video in the queue in case my connection goes down, the moderator can hit play and they can be ready to go. So utilize all those resources to take advantage of practicing. So those are my thoughts. I hope that was helpful. Feel free to ask any questions. I am on Twitter at Steve Endo, and my blog is blog.steveendo.com. And obviously you can check this out on YouTube and Twitch. And I hope this is helpful. If you're a new presenter, if you've never presented at a conference before, please submit a session. Even though it's stressful and you may not think you're comfortable doing it, go ahead and do it and find yourself a co-presenter to help you through the process. Someone who might have presented before. Definitely take the leap and participate. It's a lot of fun and I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, have a good one.